Hello and welcome to Edie Extra, the new home for all of Edie's special audio features, building on our long-running Sustainability Uncovered podcast with one-on-one interviews, site visits, analysis, panels and more. Today, I'm delighted to be hosting this Susty Talk one-on-one interview with SVZ Sustainability Manager, Silvi Navarete. Thank you so much for your time, Silvi. How are you?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for having me today. Pretty excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a while since I've spoken to SVZ colleagues, so maybe it would be good to get a brief introduction to the business and to what you're up to there.
SVZ is a premium brand when it comes to juices. We are experts in purees as well, and non-concentrate juices. And I think a key part of our brand is that sustainability is part of our philosophy. We always say it is part of our DNA. So we are a little bit more on the high end of juices, let's say it, but it's because we do take social responsibility very seriously. Sustainability, quality, of course, and our ingredients are very, in the nutritious side of the business and in the juice industry, but also we are proud to claim that they are delicious, right? I think taste really plays a huge part in everything that we do. So that's a little bit of what the brand is claiming to be, and is being, let's say, less well known in the sector of the juice industry because of that. Yeah.
Great. And as sustainability manager, what have been your focuses in terms of environmental sustainability this past year? I know that there's been a lot going on in the agri-food supply chain and in Europe, everything to do with reporting requirements, accelerating decarbonisation, working with the supply chain. So Silvi, what's been keeping you busy this year?
Yeah, I mean, this year was a lot about reframing our farm program. In past years, SVZ was fully funding sustainability programs in the field and working closely with farmers. That's actually one of our strongest points, that we are very well connected to the farm. We can trace back every ingredient that we are offering in our portfolio. But we were working a little bit in silos, and that's something that this year we definitely try to double down on. Okay, we need to involve the supply chain stakeholders, including our clients, but also our suppliers and the farmers and the cooperatives, and bring them together to work together in terms of like reducing emissions and water optimization. And I think the investment needs to be from every side. And I do not only mean financial investment, right? Like we also ask our partners in this type of programs that we have with farmers to invest time, to get knowledge from them, to work closely with agronomists from our client side, from our supplier side, or our agronomists. So I think it's a collaborative approach that we really need to take on our shoulders, and we are very proud that we some sort of like shifted the perspective this year, and so far we've been accomplishing that.
Yeah, and I did want to focus on this supply chain engagement. It's so interesting, and I'm sure something that a lot of listeners are dealing with at the moment as well. But before we do, I wanted to also talk about the upstream value chain. So you mentioned that people might not necessarily know SVZ from looking at products in the shop, but this is where they will end up. So as a supplier, what are you seeing from the people that are buying your juices and products? What sort of environmental information are they looking for? And has that conversation changed recently?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it really depends. I mean, our clients, we call it clients / customers, they depend on their customers, right? So the people, basically us as consumers, going to the supermarkets and buying our products. But I think for us, it's been essential to combine 3 factors, right? So one is quality. Quality comes together with sustainability, which is like farming ethically. And of course, nutritious ingredients and delicious ingredients is part of our brand, right? So I do think that expressing those three components in a label is difficult for clients. It's a challenging, I always say, in this new generation, you have a 3 seconds span time, and then the rest is just, there is just people not reading. I mean, that's the generation where we're at. So I think for us, a big part of our job is to make sure that our clients are able to communicate that our ingredients are sustainable. The way we normally do that is we basically, that's an initiative that we launched this year, and is we calculate from our supply chain. Again, we have a very big advantage, right? Because we are connected to the farmers. We are able to calculate and extract direct data from the farm where we are sourcing every ingredient, and we are focusing, of course, on two main things: water and greenhouse emissions. So basically, we are extracting the data, working closely with farmers and cooperatives, and making sure that we have the right team in-house, mostly agronomists and myself, to calculate the carbon footprint of those ingredients and consolidate our data to share it with our clients. And I think that's a little bit of like a step forward to make sure that our clients are able to convert that information, because of course it's difficult to just say, okay, for every kilogram of strawberries, this is the footprint. I think that's a difficult point of reference to share with consumers, but I know many of our clients are finding the way to communicate in a better way. So what we are basically doing is really cracking the numbers on not proxies, because a lot of companies use proxies. They just buy databases from, there are many available online, but we don't do that. We really go to our supply chain and take the time to create the right sample and extract the real data to share it with our clients. And I think that's something that surprises a lot this year, because a lot of our clients find that information very valuable.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And you've talked about how having close connections to farmers and cooperatives helps you get better data. But something we've also seen is it enables better collaboration for engagement and innovation. So this summer, I wrote about SVZ receiving funding through the Innocent Drinks Farmer Innovation Fund for one of those projects, which, as you mentioned, should really help drive down water use and emissions. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. We are really excited about launching this project together with Innocent Drinks. For us, it was a step forward in the world where we live now, where farmers need to assume so many risks, not only financially, but I mean, climate change is there, especially in this area where we are sourcing from, which is called Huelva in Spain. Coming to discuss a sustainability project with farmers isn't that easy. And I think farmers are realizing that requires a great amount of commitment and work. So for us, it was really important to partner with front-runner farmers who are willing to put the work. Of course, we are willing to put the resources. And I think Innocent is on that side as well of financial resources to work with them closely. So for us, it's not only about the grant on the Innocent Drink side, which is our client, and we are bringing our client together and connected client to the farmers and the cooperative. But it was also a lot of work being done on the farmer side, right? So this project basically brings the client, us as supplier, of course, and the cooperative, because we don't want to work without the cooperative. When there is a cooperative, the cooperative should always be involved, because I do think that empowers farmers and they don't feel alone. They are a block coming together, negotiating strongly together. And I think within our farm-centric approach, we value that, which differentiates us from other brands in the farmers, right? So it's like different parties coming together. And then we are being supported by experts. We intentionally choose to partner with consultants. In this case, are two consultants, right, working with us. One is on greenhouse emissions on farm level, and the other one is water optimization, and they need to be locally based. That's one of our requirements. The second thing that really I think is something that I'm proud of is that we don't want projects that create dependency with farmers, meaning when the funding is gone, the farmer is not going to be able to afford that technology or that consultant or whatever. So what we did with this grant, and that's how we framed it together with Innocent, was like, okay, we're going to start a project that in the long term, meaning actually long term in farming is already 3-4 years, is going to enable the farmer to pay the technology without any funding, right? So the technology really needs to target not only emissions, less external inputs, of course, optimizing water, but it also needs to be profitable, because farming is an activity that actually requires a lot of investment, right? So it needs to become profitable for the farmer. And that's what we did. So we launched this project. It's based on a technology called Hydrex, and it was a non-commercial technology that was tested in this region for 4 years by the European Union. It was a grant by the European Union. And then when the grant ended, nobody was really willing to take this technology because, of course, it's a very expensive one, right? So what we did is like, we said, okay, we want to continue this. Of course, we selected farmers within our supply chain, and we want to be able to demonstrate to the farmer that through the usage of this technology, they will reach some savings in water bills, right? Because you need to optimize water, and second, savings in external inputs. And whatever you try to save there, it's not only good for reaching our sustainability farming goals, but it's also good for the pocket of the farmer. So it needs to come together. And that's how we designed this project with Innocent Rings, of course.
Great. And you mentioned essentially that this is really good for savings for farmers at the moment. And we hear about how many challenges farmers are facing with things like input costs, water costs, energy costs, changing weather. But then equally, we hear some people say, well, then they don't have time to do the sustainability stuff. So how do you get through to farmers and work with them on, as you say, some of the practical skills and the understanding as well as the money?
I would say first things first, our food system is really broken. So it's up to the ones who are making the most money out of it to support farmers. I mean, we should think in a collaborative level, some sort of like, for me, it's always important to involve as many people as possible in a project, right? But I think we need to assume some accountability, and it is important that the transition of this food system is on us. So of course we are willing to finance that transition. That's something that we have super clear. It's like part of what we do this, right? And we invite our clients who have the same mentality to understand that we need to finance the transition from a conventional farming to a sustainable / organic / regenerative farming system. But being that said, we also believe that that transition needs to also, or requires also, financial feasibility, right? So that's key when you are hiring a consultant, right? We just don't hire a consultant because it's the best rate. We hire a consultant because they are offering a scheme system that needs to show results that will basically support farmers in embracing that technology because it's financially feasible. And that's where we are there for. And I think it sounds a little bit like we are controlling the investment, but I think we don't have that intentionality. We wouldn't really be able to also convince farmers. Nowadays, farmers are in a very busy schedule, and they already are thinking about the next season and all of that. So we need to be smart when we present a project. I think in this case, we were very successful because they hear us and they understand that our approach is all based on, if you don't get the results that we are promising you, there is nothing required from your side, right? So we were basically financing the transition ourselves. But if we do get the results, right? So in this case, this grant aims to have a 15% reduction of water at farm level. Water is a very scarce resource in Spain because of the drought. So it's actually very, very attractive when you talk about water reduction or optimization in this area. and 20% emission reduction. So that means that needs to also be translated somehow into external inputs, which the last 2 years are not really going up. Inputs, like the cost of inputs are not going up. It's not like the COVID time where we were also a little bit scared of how inputs were increasing their its cost, but it still is attractive for farmers, right? So that's what we want to do, make it attractive for farmers thinking about their pocket.
Of course, and when you look at the fund, the Innocent Drinks Farmer Innovation Fund, they backed a number of other projects with a focus on other regenerative agriculture practices. So I wanted to get your take on where SVZ is in strategizing around more regenerative agriculture more broadly, as well as this project specifically.
I think there is a little bit of like a misconception around regenerative agriculture. It became mainstream, and we are glad that it is becoming very mainstream. We even launched internal research with our interns, and we found out that 76% of our clients are claiming regenerative agriculture as part of the sustainability program, and they have regenerative agricultural goals. But I do think it's really important that we acknowledge that a lot of farmers are already regenerative, but they don't call it regenerative. For example, that's something we noticed. I mean, regenerative agriculture has a lot of, let's say, components, right? It's not only about greenhouse emissions, it's also about water, it's also about biodiversity, ecosystem services. We acknowledge all of that, and what we see in our supply chain is that many of our farmer partners, they already working a lot on one of those components. So we don't really want to be like the advocates of regenerative agriculture. I also noticed that this movement of regen ag is in a way sometimes missing that important piece of financial feasibility. That's really key, because that's what's gonna make it. But in our case, that's actually the pillar. The main pillar is like, okay, this needs to be financially feasible for a farmer, with or without us. So it's a transition always, right? That's why we have another project, which we launched in partnership with another client. And we don't call it regenerative agriculture yet, but these projects, in the end, they have some sort of like component of what regen ag is. And I think at least what I see, and this is my perspective, at least what I see in my sector is that we call it regenerative agriculture, but we should maybe call it regenerative supply chains, right? Regeneration is a lot about like connection. It's a lot about bringing people together. It's a lot about women empowerment. It's a lot about female farmers. And I think that's what we're trying to do. So the fact that I'm able to bring a supplier and a client and a cooperative and a farmer and see that all together, for me, that's already regeneration of our food system, because in most of the cases, regenerating our supply chain requires that you unlock this black box. Many cases, there are competitors like us who do not really know where their ingredients are coming from, because you need to go to a pack house and then an intermediate and another intermediate, and then you find a cooperative, and behind a cooperative there is a farmer. But for us, that's exactly what regeneration is. So I think we don't really want to have an approach of regenerative farming only. It's more regenerative supply chains. And with that, we do have another program, again, just going back to that point, where we are working with another client of us in water optimization as well, part of a pillar of regenerative agriculture, and mulching, which is also a big issue for us in Spain, because mulching generates a lot of plastic waste, and we want to get rid of plastic in farming. That's actually one of our dreams as a company, to support that transition. So yeah, again, so going back to just, it's not regenerative farming, it's just regenerative supply chains for us.
I get it. That makes sense. It's like so interesting to me how wording and framing can actually take work that's already going on and take it to the next level, which is why I do like to talk about communications in this a lot. But Silvi, I think we're almost out of time on this episode on Edie Extra. So thank you so much for sharing your time and all of your insights. I'm sure that's really helpful for a lot of folks listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah, for having us today.